everyone, I'm Anne-Marie from Brambleberry. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm going to be showing you how to make this amazing celestial inspired soap. Now I know this looks complicated, and I'm not going to lie, it sort of is complicated in the sense that it takes a lot of steps. It's not that complicated to make though. It is, however, a recipe that's a little more advanced. So if you haven't made cold process soap before, stop and watch the first 4 cold process episodes on Soap Queen TV or in our library so that you learn how to make cold process soap, or read the first few chapters of any of my 3 books. This soap was specifically designed around an amazing fragrance oil that I love. This is from the Brambleberry Celestial Collection. It's called Night Violet. And first of all, it of course has the notes of violet in it. It also has some bergamot, some lemon, and believe it or not, a little bit of cucumber notes to keep it really fresh and light. In cold process soap, it accelerates just mildly, meaning it speeds everything up just a little bit, but that's great because we're doing layers. So we actually use it in this design to our advantage. As you can see, there are some embeds in this, and so because of the embeds, what we're going to do is do those first. The embeds are made with the Like Cold Process Melt and Pour soap from Brambleberry. And what's Like Cold Process Melt and Pour soap? Well, it has less glycerin added to it. Glycerin is a humectant that draws moisture to itself or to the skin or whatever product it's in. So in this type of thing, where a glycerin-based soap is in an open air environment, it could get a little weepy, little wet, little, well, sweaty for lack of a better word. So the Like Cold Process soap is essential for making this recipe work. So melt and pour soap is fairly easy to make, and I don't want you to watch the world's longest video, so I'm not going to make it all the way through. Basically, you chop this soap up into smaller, kind of 1-inch cubes. You melt it in the microwave on 30-second bursts in a heat-safe container, and then you pour it into the molds and wait between 2 to 4 hours for it to set. I went ahead and made these ahead of time. These are the Brambleberry Mini Moon and Star molds. I love them. Created them a few years ago, and what I like most about them is they have an interlocking mechanism, meaning these 2 channels fit together perfectly so you get very little soap leakage. Now, if you do get any soap leakage, you can take a little cleanup tool. This is the Brambleberry cleanup tool, and just kind of clean up along the sides if there's any soap leakage at all. You might find you get a little bit, and it's not that big of a deal. It's very easy and fast to clean up. So for this recipe, you're going to need 1 of the moon and 2 of the stars. Now I'm going to unmold my star mold, and remember, you need 2 of them. They unmold so easily because of this really great locking channel system. And oftentimes with the star, there's less cleanup work to do than with the moon, if you can believe it. In fact, I'm not really seeing any. And if you only have 1 of these molds, make sure you have 2 stars made ahead of time. The next step is to fit this into our Brambleberry silicone loaf mold. So let me show you how that's done. So this is the Brambleberry silicone loaf mold. We want to make sure that when we are ready for it to go into the soap, that it's actually ready to push in. So I just take it and I measure it kind of on the back and take a knife and cut it. And I do make sure that you're taking into account how thick the walls of the silicone loaf mold are when you're doing that. So here I'm just going to test it. Goes in perfectly. And again, 2 stars, 1 moon. So let's get this moon one cut. And then we'll be ready to start working with our colorants, measuring our fragrances, because cold process soap, the separation is in the preparation. One of the essential things to do when you are doing cold process soap is to pre-mix your colorants. In this case, I'm using titanium dioxide, which is almost like a clay, so it really does need to be pre-mixed. And I've got 1 teaspoon dispersed into 1 tablespoon of lightweight oil. Then I'm using the Brambleberry Queen's Purple Mica. And finally, I'm using black iron oxide. And the black is very strong. A little goes a long way. Notice I mixed from lightest to darkest, so that way I didn't have to rinse this off or clean it in between colors. Because I know exactly how much I need of these colors, I'm going to go ahead and put the colors into my containers right now. That way it saves a little bit of blending time at the end. So I've got my recipe sitting right here because I want to make sure I have the right amounts. Now, if you want to have your recipe sitting right in front of you, It's down below this video, so make sure you check that out if you want to make this exactly the same way I do. And this is a good mixture of some whites and some purples and then also some blacks to tone it down. So right now what I'm mixing is titanium dioxide and the purple color, and because I'm looking to get a gradient. So that's one of the reasons that I'm using the black and the white to make my gradient hue. Now that my colorants are all in there, it's time to suit up for safety. Cold process soap is one of those things like driving a car where you just want to be extra safe because, well, lye burns hurt and your eyes really need a lot of protection just in case there's any splashes. So I have my lye water measured and I have all my oils measured. For this particular recipe, I used some sunflower oil, some cocoa butter, which I really like for the hardness factor, and of course some coconut oil and palm oil. And I'm using sodium lactate in my recipe as well as a 10% water discount because I really want these layers to set up, but I also need enough time to work with the layers. It's kind of a paradox on how you formulate for that. So I'm pretty excited about this recipe. For this, I'm going for a pretty light trace because I have to work with 5 different containers. So I don't want to start out with too heavy of a trace or else I'm going to end up with glop by the end of this. Because I know exactly how this night violet performs, I'm going to go ahead and fragrance my entire batch. Now, if you were at all concerned about a fragrance oil, you'd want to be individually fragrancing these when you're ready to use them. But since this has the most mild acceleration of all time, it can go into this entire batch, and then I'm just hand whisking in. I'm going to do just about 300 milliliters per colorant. And I love these containers from Brambleberry because they really have, well, first of all, fantastic markings, but then second, these spouts are so useful to pour with, especially for more detailed operations. Now, doing the lightest to darkest concept, I'm just gonna whisk these colors in, give them a good mixing. And then when it's time to do the individual layers, we'll stick blend those to get them to be a little bit thicker. And this is where it's really nice to have an extra stick blender shaft. Brambleberry sells extra stick blender shafts, so you can get your stick blender and then get multiple shafts so you can always have a clean one on hand and not have to wash it in between. That is just a huge help if you are a maker that is doing more complicated designs or has something like this where you're literally working with a white and a black in the same batch. I'm just gonna set these guys off to the side, but I'm keeping them in order, and get my mold into view here. Now it's time to stick blend. So taking my stick blender, putting it all the way to the bottom, burping it to try and really minimize those air bubbles. This is a very, very thick trace now, which is fantastic. So I am going to now pour this into the bottom of my mold. And since this is a starry night scene, it doesn't have to be smooth. Spatula. And I'm gonna get all of it out because it's pretty important. So getting all of it out and just and I'll just kind of spread it at the bottom so it goes all over the entire bottom of the mold so we get a full layer in there. And remember, it doesn't have to be smooth, so this isn't like make the layer smooth. In fact, I like it with a little bit of texture in it. So I like the kind of rivers and the cloud effect of not having it smooth. I see a little bit of black on the side, and you know what? I'm gonna wipe it away. So since I got a little bit of black on the side of this, and it's totally not a big deal, I'm just being a perfectionist, I'm just wiping it away because that would really kind of hurt the look of the side of this where it is there, and I want these to be clean. So just wipe that away. Now I'm gonna work on my next color. So I'm just gonna kind of take a look at my stick blender. It's not that black, it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna stick blend my next color with it. Now I know since I'm moving from the blacks to the purples, I am definitely gonna switch out my shafts for this next one. So I'm just gonna pop this off right now and get that prepared. So I am ready to go when I need to switch to purple. So pour your gray in, and remember, you want to get all of it out. So try and get pretty fluid on the sides. Since you have that first layer already down, you have a little bit less flexibility for how much kind of playing you get to do here. So try and get it all the way to the sides. And I grabbed a few different size spoons so I can really get that cloud, that starry night texture in terms of how I want this to look on the inside with the waviness. And after I have it fully out to the sides, I'm going to stick my moon in. And the fun thing about the moon, because remember it's 2 stars and 1 moon, you kind of have to remember where you're placing the moon, because the moon, there's 1 moon and 1 star that go on top of each other. And so you have to remember where you place the moon. And that's where I like the Brambleberry logo on the silicone mold, because I can use that kind of as my guide. So I'm working to get this perfect with, again, that kind of starry night texture. It looks really fun and different, and it's very clear that I'm not going for even lines. Now I'm going to take my moon and I'm going to put it on the side of the bee that has the leaf. And I'm just going to stick it down in here and kind of just place it a little bit and wiggle it around. You want to kind of make sure you're not getting any air pockets. And remember, it goes up through the purple layer, so you don't want it to be, it doesn't need to sit on the bottom. So that looks great. And then I'm going to remember my moon is almost touching the leaf on the Brambleberry bee. And now it's time for our purple. So now it's time to move to the purple. I've switched out stick blenders. I'm going to take it, burp it on the bottom, right? Get rid of any air bubbles. Beautiful. Love that consistency. Now, I'm gonna pour this over, and since that first layer is really thick, I don't really have to worry about any breakthrough, but I am going back and forth gently to make sure that I'm getting my moon pretty covered. And I'm gonna get all that soap out using this spoon and getting it into the corners here. And ultimately, this is one of those recipes that has so much personalization in it, because if you're making this at home and you're looking at this and you're watching me and you keep rewinding and you're like, what is she doing? Well, I have to get the purple all the way to the ends, just like she is. Pfft. You guys, it's, first of all, soap. And no one knows what the original design was supposed to look like. So whatever you do, it's gonna be great. I see a little bit of this purple sticking up on the side, which is driving me a little bonkers. So I am gonna try and just get this out, because remember, one of the things I like about this is getting really even kind of lines right here through the sides. And so I'm gonna clean that up. And that, again, you guys, it's a weird perfectionist tendency. Don't even worry about it if that doesn't bother you. Okay, so now it's time for our next layer, and I also want to make sure that my star is ready to go, because it's time to put my first star in pretty soon. And by pretty soon, I actually mean right now. So since this star goes on the other side, remember looking at this design, you're like, oh, we had the moon here, the next star is here, but then the second placement goes here. I'm going to put on the other side of that bee. That's where, again, that's so useful to have that Brambleberry logo right there. And just plop it right in there, stick it on down. And that star is gonna be also in our light purple layer. And oh my goodness, you guys, this fragrance is performing so well. I don't even know how long it's been, but this fragrance is still so fluid that it's actually not thick enough to do what I want it to. So I'm gonna stick blend that. And this is, again, purple hue to purple hue, so I'm not gonna change out my stick blender. Now that this, but you can see this is still fluidy enough that I'm gonna really be able to get over that star, which is the important thing, because we wanna make sure we're filling the star crevices up so there's no air holes. And then take your spoon and just grab all the last of that that lighter purple color, so that way you're fully covering the entire mold. And feel free to just manipulate again, because we're wanting beautiful layers. So manipulate for your starry night sky look and feel. And now it's time to get ready for our final layer. And the final layer is actually really fun. We did it as a light color, so that way we could do an interesting design idea on top. This one also needs a little bit of a stick blending because it's actually still a little thin to get me my kind of layered look on top that I'm looking for. Now, just like the last one, go ahead and take your soap and smoothly pour it over. Now you're gonna have a chance to manipulate this with a little bit of a spoon, so you're good. And then after this, we're gonna put the final star in. So take your spoon and make sure you're getting all that last bit of soap out, because we don't wanna waste any soap at all. So now I'm just gonna use the spoon to kind of smooth out the top, but then I'm also going to work on getting a little bit more texture and definition in with a much smaller spoon. And the nice thing about this consistency is it's gonna hold a little bit of texture, just enough to make it definitely a starry night and celestial look, but not so much that it is looking choppy. So I love that kind of cloud look we have. And remember where our placement is. Our placement is on the top side of the bee, which is here where our brambleberry little leaf is. So I'm just gonna put this in here, and I want it to stick out just a little bit. So I'm gonna place it in here gently and displace quite a lot of the soap, but I do want it to stick out, and I'm just gonna kind of wiggle it in. Done and done. And then finally, it's gonna be time to make our topping. I don't know if you remember what the topping looked like, but it had this beautiful kind of frosted look to it. So now it's time to make our topping. So let's go ahead and do that. Now it's time for our very final touch, which is a really cool topping. So this is just about 1 teaspoon of colorant to 1 tablespoon of rubbing alcohol. And what this does is it makes a really kind of cool paint. Now granted, I'll give you that the paint for the top does wash away after 1 or 2 washes, but it's really cool. And especially if you're making this for sale, the shelf appeal of this is very fun. And I personally find a little bit more interesting than kind of the plain top. So this is, you just take your paintbrush and you just kind of mix it in, and that makes a really good consistency. And then from there, you literally just drop these on. That's it. You just kind of drop, flick, 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 flick. And you don't want to do too much. If it's too much, you end up with little kind of divots, but like, so flick just like lightly with, and you get a slightly different look when you flick it with your pointer finger. So that was my white, and now I'm gonna take my gold. This gold sparkle mica from Brambleberry is so amazing. I think we've had this one for like a solid 10 or 15 years. It is a stalwart in terms of performance. It's stable in cold processed soap, and it really provides some excellent shimmer and glimmer. And then finally, we're gonna do the Queen's Purple. And I guess I should probably mention, you notice this is a pretty impervious surface. I'm assuming you're soaping on an impervious surface. If you are not, you're definitely gonna wanna do that before flicking color all over the place. This is Queen's Purple Mica. And if you're looking at this and you're like, you know what, I'm not quite so happy. I really, the white isn't enough. You can always go back over this with more colors, different colors. And this is my suggestions. I love the purple and the gold and that white together. I think they're really fun, but some, you could really do some other fun kind of celestial inspired colors as well. And I'm just gonna do just a little bit more gold, and then I'm going to unmold the soap I made this week for you so you can see what this looks like once it's cut. So I made this just about 3 or 4 days ago, and I didn't gel it, so I am expecting it to be just a little bit soft, but I like the look of this one when it doesn't gel. It's a little bit more opaque, and let's see. This is, and so remember, when you are using a knife, you twirl it off as opposed to pulling it off, right? That looks so beautiful. I don't really even see any cleanup work, but if you saw any cleanup work, you could clean it up super easily. This looks perfect. I can't wait to cut the rest of these. So because I want these to be totally perfect. And I'm feeling a little knife challenge today, not gonna lie, can't cut a straight line today. I'm gonna use the brambleberry wire cutter for the rest of these. And we don't normally do the brambleberry wire cutter for full melt and pour loaves that are like 100% made out of melt and pour, but in this case, since it's just a few little embeds, it'll be completely fine. It does take just a little bit of core strength, so make sure you're cored up and then come on down and I can hear it cutting and it's so perfect. Ah! Okay, now pull out. Let's just see how these look. Okay, that was the right decision. This looks perfect. I'm very happy. Thank you so much for watching this episode with me. And if you like it, make sure you hit the like button below. Also, please subscribe to the channel. That way you see all the new videos that come out. And when you're making these products or anything with the brambleberry.com line of products, please hashtag it on social media, hashtag BrambleOn. I love to see what you create. The team loves to see what you create. And more importantly, the community of soap makers all over the world that believe creativity is essential also watch that hashtag and they get inspired too. Until next time, you guys, bye. And let you sit right there, little guy. Just sit right there. Be my guide. Is there a song that I can sing around that from Disney?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like anything.
Now I'm just thinking about Ariel. A whole new world.